Okay, could we go to the eighth view, which is the basilar view of brain? So going back to the 1966 inventory, black and white negatives numbers 19, 21, and 22, and color numbers 46, 47, 48, and 49.
We did have them. There's another ruler, but that gives it to Fisher Instruments.
Off the record. I'm Stringer, if I remember correctly from earlier in your testimony, you said that you had not recalled that there were any basilar photographs of the brain of President Kennedy. Can you identify whether the photographs that are in front of you now are basilar or superior views of a brain?
They're basilar.
If I recall correctly, earlier in your testimony, you said that there were identification cards that were used for identification of the brain when photographs were taken. Is that correct?
Yeah. Well, there's a ruler there, but there's no identification on it there.
Based upon these being basilar views of a brain and based upon there being no identification cards, are you able to identify with certainty whether these photographs before you now are photographs of the brain of President Kennedy?
No, I couldn't say that they were President Kennedy. I mean, there's no identification. All I know is I gave everything to Jim Humes, and he gave them to Admiral Berkeley.
Sorry, to Admiral?
Berkeley, B-U-R-K-L-E-Y.
Do you have any recollection in 1996 about what the appearance of the brain of President Kennedy looked like at the supplementary examination?
No.
Are you able to determine whether the photographs in front of you now are consistent with or not consistent with the brain as you remember it from 1963?
Well, it has to be if that's Mr. Kennedy.
Well, that's the question, though.
Yeah.
Does the brain in the photograph that you're looking at seem to be more hardened or drier than you recall at the time that you conducted this supplementary autopsy?
No.
The consistency looks to you roughly consistent
Like
with
a brain that has been fixed, yes.
Can you tell anything from the color of the brain in the photographs of how long it has been fixed?
No, I couldn't.
Can you tell anything from the consistency as it appears in the photograph about how long the brain has been fixed?
No, I would have no idea.
Okay. When you took the black and white photographs of the brain of President Kennedy, did you use a press pack?
No.
Can you identify from the negatives in front of you whether those photographs are from a press pack? Now referring to numbers 19, 21, and 22.
I think they are. Yes.
would it be fair to say then that by your recollection that the black and white negatives in front of you now were not taken by you during supplementary autopsy of President Kennedy?
Correct. This is Ansco.
When you say this is Ansco, what do you mean?
This is Ansco film.
What is Ansco film?
Well, it's a super high pan, and I think it's from a pack.
Sorry, from a...
From a film pack. Have you got one of those other negatives I can see? From the
Try 17 or 18. Black and white negatives.
The spelling of that film,
A-N-S-C-O. See the difference in them.
Just so I can identify this for the record, you now have in your hands a negative
And
number 18.
It is identified with the film code on it.
With the notches up
With
on
the
the
notches.
corner.
On this, it has no notches.
And when you say this, you're now referring to the black and white
Yes,
negative.
Yes, to the black and white negative, which is from a film pack.
Now, Mr. Stringer, if I recall correctly, during the course of the deposition, you identified 3 different factors relating to photography of the brain that would suggest that you would have had an identification number in it, you would not have used a film pack, and you did not take a basilar view of the brain. Is that correct?
I think so. Yeah, that's what. Whether I took it back, I don't know. But see, this is from a film pack because they are numbered. This is film number 2, film number 1, and 3. And it's from a film pack.
Okay.
Because when it comes out of a holder, it is identified by the notch because you have to load it in the holder with a notch.
Okay. So the first 3 black and white negatives would presumably have been taken sequentially by a black and white film pack. Is that correct?
Correct. That's what it was done.
Okay. Could we now go to the second view of the brain? So this will now be the 9th view, the superior view of the brain. Black and white negative numbers 20, 23, 24, 25, and color numbers 50, 51, and 52. Okay, back on the record. Mr. Stringer, what did you notice about the color positive transparencies when they were just brought out from their folders?
Well, there are some spots on them. There's some white spots in the black portion.
That's in the margin?
In the margin, and some white spots, but that's in the actual photograph, the white spots.
In the image itself?
In the image itself.
Do you know what those dots are, or perforations, whatever they... Not perforations in the film, but what appear to be perforations?
I don't know what it is. It's, but they're the same pattern and everything. It could be, but they're not on the black and white.
Have you ever noticed that before in any photographs that you have taken personally?
I've never looked so closely before.
On the color photograph showing the superior view of the brain, do you recognize any identification tags or markings?
Now this film is also different than the other. You see the code in here? On all the other photographs, it is Ektachrome.
Okay, and these are not Ektachrome notches, or you're not certain? It's just
I'm not
that
certain, but they're different. I think it's a different type of film. It could be Ansco film, like this.
Did you ever use Ansco film yourself in conducting medical photography?
Not very often.
Did you use Ansco film in taking the autopsy
Not as
photographs
far
of
as I
President
know.
Kennedy?
Not as far as I know.
Is there any question in your mind whether you are the photographer of these images that are before you right now?
Yes, if it's Ansco film and if it's a film pack, I have no recollection of using a film pack.
Do you see any identification markers or identification numbers on the photographs?
No, the only thing is there's a Fisher instrument ruler, I think. Fisher Scientific. I don't know whether there was one in one of the medical photographs or not. There was a ruler, but I don't know whether it was a Fisher or not.
You've now been shown all of the images from the supplementary autopsy. Did you see any images that would show a brain that had been sectioned in any way?
No. No, I don't.
Are there any other photographs that you remember taking yourself during the supplementary autopsy that you haven't seen today?
I had the thought we had done some sections cutting through the brain, but I don't see them. And I could be mistaken. But this could be identified by a photo place where they have all of the notches.
Without looking at the photographs, if this makes sense, do you have a recollection in your mind of whether the cerebellum on President Kennedy was disrupted? So you're looking at the photographs.
Well, you mean that? You mean the damaged?
Whether it was damaged, lacerated, cut?
Yes.
Was it?
Yes.
Do you see any damaged cerebellum in these photographs?